and welcome to the Habits of Hope podcast, where we believe that a life rooted in hope grows through daily rhythms that help us trust God's faithfulness, even in life's hardest seasons. I'm Ginger Harrington, author, speaker, and encourager at heart, and I'm so glad that you're here. Let's be honest. When the last child leaves for home, it can feel like a door slamming shut. The house is quieter, your calendar emptier, and you start wondering, who am I now? But what if this season isn't the end of the party? It's just moving into a new room. What if God has been preparing you for a chapter so full of purpose, joy, and new adventure that you just might call it the after party? Today's guest is here to help us see the empty nest through a lens of hope. My guest today is Kate Battistelli, author, speaker, and encourager of women in every life stage. Kate is the best-selling author of The After Party of the Empty Nest, Mom is Not Your Only Name, The God Dare, and Growing Great Kids. She's one-third of the popular Mom to Mom podcast. As a young actress in New York City, Kate had the life-changing experience of going from understudy to starring as Anna in the Broadway national tour of The King and I, opposite Yul Brynner, for more than 1,000 performances. Kate and her husband laid down their careers at Broadway theater in answer to their first God Dare, moving out of New York City and into a life of homeschooling and home business. She lives in Franklin, Tennessee, near her daughter, Francesca, and 7 grandchildren. Kate serves women by encouraging them to step out with God into His irresistible future. She's here to help us reframe change, rediscover our calling, and walk into the future that God has for us with hope. Kate, welcome to the Habits of Hope podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me. I am excited to be here today.
I am so looking forward to digging into this conversation because so many women in our audience are either walking through the empty nest or will be before they know it, and they need the encouragement that you bring. Kate, the title of your book calls The Empty Nest the After Party, and that's such a hopeful twist, and it sounds like a lot of fun.
It's not fun in the beginning, but it gets fun.
Right. Was there a specific moment in your experience that shifted your own perspective from loss to anticipation?
Yeah, well, at first, when the empty nest hit, I really was not prepared for it, and it hit like a ton of bricks. And I was miserable because we have an only child. Francesca's our only child, and we were helping her with, navigating, moving to Nashville and the whole record world, the whole Christian music world. And I'd never really thought about, there's a time when she's going to be gone and I'm going to be alone. Being an only child, we spent so much time together. So all of a sudden that you just wake up and all of a sudden they're gone. But that's the whole point. We raise them to go. If we're doing our job right, we're raising them to be independent adults. So once she left, it was tough for me for a couple of years. I didn't know what to do with my time, but eventually I started volunteering, which I always recommend. It's a great way to get you out of your house, out of yourself. You're not thinking so much about me. You're thinking about how can I help others? So I started volunteering at a single mom's ministry. And it was great. I mean, we were really able to help the moms. I made great friends there. So it was that release that I needed to get past the difficulty, because it is hard. I mean, nobody really can explain what it's like to have an empty nest until you're in it. It's lonely. It's just difficult because you're used to these kids around, and now it's quiet. Like you said, there are those empty chairs at the dinner table, and figuring out, well, what am I now? I was mom for so many years. Is that it? Is that the best that it's ever going to be? Or is there something else? And the whole point of the after party is there is a whole nother world, a whole other purpose God has for you. Because I never set out to be an author, but God, He gave me a whole new purpose. And I really think I can't say the best part of my life, because being a mom was wonderful too, but it's just been very fulfilling to see that God had a different purpose for me, another purpose. And He has that for all of us.
That is so true. And I can remember feeling some of those exact things. In fact, right around this time, years ago, my youngest daughter went to college, and I felt that empty nest when the first two went.
Yeah.
The house got quieter and quieter, but there was still one at home.
Right.
And there was something about the youngest leaving that hit both my husband and I much harder than we had anticipated. And I can remember waking up the first morning after she'd moved to college and walking out of the bedroom. I could see straight into her bedroom door, which was open. The bed was perfectly made. And it just was like, she doesn't live here anymore.
Yeah.
Because having had older kids, I knew like once they go to college, they are in and out, but it's not like they're living at your home permanently anymore. And so that was just, and it hit my husband too. We were just like weepy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Weirdly weepy.
Well, it's a time of grieving. You know, you are grieving what you had. And you at least have, I always say I didn't have any backup siblings, you know, those other kids to at least soften the blow. But like you said, the last one goes. And it's hard. I mean, it just is, but it doesn't have to consume you. You know, I've talked to some women that say, oh, it's been 3 years and I'm just miserable. And I'm thinking, what have you been doing these 3 years? You've got to get into that next purpose, because each of us is on this planet for a reason. And if he's given you another 40 years, which is probably what we're going to have, hopefully at least that, what are you going to do to fill that? What is your purpose in building the kingdom? You know, that's how I think of it, that we're coming to the end of the age, I believe. I believe we're in the end times. I don't know how your audience feels, but if that's the fact, then we don't have a lot of time. And what is my part in building the kingdom, in bringing people in? And if we think of it that way, I think it gives a little more urgency to figuring out, okay, what am I supposed to do, Lord? What's that next thing? Because there is a next thing that I can guarantee any one of your audience that's listening that there's more.
Yes. Can you take us back to that moment where God really made that thought firm of, I have more for you to do?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, after our daughter left for Nashville, she was getting songs on the radio. Her name was becoming known, and we'd homeschooled her. And I got a call one day from the gal that ran this big homeschooling umbrella organization that we were with. And she called and said, Kate, we're having our big 20th anniversary. Can you and Mike come and speak to our parents? Tell them, what did you do to raise your daughter to not only find her purpose and her path, but to continue following the Lord? Because we know so many kids go out, you know, they move out and this culture just kind of sucks them in. So what did you do? Will you come and speak? And I was thinking, oh, Lord, what did we do? And I said, sure, we'd love to come. I hung up the phone. I looked at my husband, Mike, and I said, what the heck did we do? Because, you know, you're just trying to raise your child according to biblical principles. There was no manual, you know, I mean, other than the Bible. So, but we sat down and we came up with 15 things. And I thought, okay, we didn't do too badly. There were 15 concrete things. So we gave our talk a couple weeks later. And the next morning after that, I was just so glad it went well. The parents enjoyed it. And right as I thanked the Lord for those 15 things, I heard him speak in my spirit. And he said, those are book chapters. And I just thought, Lord, I don't want to write a book. I can't write a book. No one will read it. No one will publish it. You know, all the things. I didn't graduate college, but that's because theater, that was my thing. But at that point, I thought, okay, and I had a friend who was a writing coach. I didn't really even know what that was, but I knew she knew more than I did. So I sat down, you know, we had lunch together, and I show her my 15 things, and I said, I feel like the Lord's saying this is a book. Is it a book? And she looks at it. She goes, yes, this is a book. I'm going to help you get started. You're going to write it and we're going to get it published. And I mean, I just thought, all right, this is a whole different path. It's what I call a God dare, when God drops that crazy thing in your spirit that you just think, this is way beyond anything I could do on my own. God, if you're calling me to this, you have to equip me to do it. And he does. If he's calling you to something crazy, it's his job, you know, to help you do it. And he did. Then I realized I really want to write about the Lord and about different things he's showing me. So I thought to myself, Lord, You dared me to write that book. I know you dared me. And I've got to start reading scripture a little differently and see how you did this. And it's throughout scripture. The Lord just constantly, like Esther, go in and speak to the king. You have a very good chance that you're going to be instantly killed, but go do it. And she did. Or Abraham, leave behind everything you know, go to a land that I'll show you. I'm not going to tell you, you obey and go. And he did. And it was accounted to him for righteousness, and it changed everything because he was willing to take that dare. I mean, it's all through scripture. So I was starting to see this, and I wrote a blog post called The God Dare with several different biblical heroes. And a friend of mine, where at the publishing house where I'd had Growing Great Kids, that was the name of the first book, which is really those 15 things, more of a parenting book, what we did to raise Francesca. And so she calls me and she says, Kate, you need to turn this into a book. And I was like, well, I thought that was kind of a one-time thing, but I knew she was right. I just realized God has done that with my husband and I so many times where we're going in one direction. I call them 90-degree turns. And God takes you this whole other way, and you're just going, okay, Lord, if you're calling us that way, you have to make it clear. And he does. But sometimes it's step by step, like with Abraham, day by day. But if he calls you to it, he has to equip you. And he has. And then at that point, I thought, okay, I guess I really am an author. And I tell women today, I say, if you told me 15 years ago, Kate, in 15 years, you'll have written 4 books now. You'll be part of a successful podcast. You'll be speaking around the country. I'd have said, you're crazy. That's not me. But God says that is you. And he has something like that for each of us. He calls us by another name. I mean, I can call myself things I never would have imagined 15 years ago, but if we're faithful and we listen and we take that bungee jump, which is what I call it, like a spiritual bungee jump, you can't imagine what God has in this next season. And we can get weighed down by the empty nest. But the reason I call it an after party, because people think this does not feel like a party. No, and not in the beginning, but an after party in theater, it's like at the end of the show's closing, everybody gets together and has this party where you're really looking back at what you did, at how well it all worked out. It's a celebration of that. And if we think of it that way, celebrate what you did as a mom, celebrate how your kids are turning out, and there's sometimes where it's hard. You've got a wayward child or a prodigal child, and that I have a chapter on that in the book. But typically, our kids are going off into that next thing, and we can look at a job well done. So that's why I call it an after party. And it becomes a time to celebrate. Like I can look at it now and I think maybe this is even the better part of my life, because what I'm doing is really having an impact. And all of us can have an impact in some way, and we're supposed to,
Yes, yes. And I love that recommendation to celebrate. I think we're so consumed with daily life and going on to the next thing or solving the problem in front of us that we forget the importance of celebration. Yeah. And celebration is actually a spiritual discipline. And it's not celebrating, oh, we did such an awesome job as parents, but celebrating what God has done through us as parents and in the lives of our children. Seeing our kids, they're all young adults now, married, and 2 out of 3 of them have children now. And it's such a joy to see what God's doing in their lives. And there is thankfully so much to celebrate. Yeah. So I love that you bring that out. So many moms, as you have pointed to, equate the empty nest with losing their purpose. And what do you say to the mom that is struggling with the emotions on the day-to-day beyond, go out and get busy, like do something, but like just in terms of that emotional journey, do you have any words of encouragement for that woman?
Well, I think take it to the Lord. He knows exactly what you're dealing with. And if you press in, take that time every day to really sit with him and hear him. What is your purpose for me, Lord? Because I think if we get stuck there, then we're not going to be able to hear. That's going to be so noisy in our head, all that we've lost, rather than what is next, because God has so much more for us. Even for many of us, becoming a grandma, that's a wonderful thing. It's not for everybody, but for those of us that have been blessed that the Lord's allowed that. But there's also, even if that was all I felt like the Lord had for me, there's wonderful ways you can help, that you can be an aid to your kids. But there's just so much more. Try not to get stuck in that, because I talk in the book about 3 different types of bird mamas. If you remember that part, where there's the swallow mom, who's the one that's, okay, I'm ready. My kids are gone. I'm moving on to the next thing. And there are a lot of them, but there are also the mourning dove moms, which are the ones that kind of sit in it. And it's hard for them to see beyond their pain. It's hard to see a future. And then there's the robin mom, which was what I was, that are kind of anxious for the next thing, but also it was hard for me. I'd never planned for it. If your kids are going soon, or they're starting to go one by one, start thinking about, praying about what's next. If you know what you're going to be doing, or at least have a glimpse of that, the Lord's shown you, you can start preparing now. You can start getting ready. You can take that college class and get your degree. Like I didn't. I probably should have, but you can do. I have one gal, she went back to college and she graduated as a nurse the same day as her son graduated from college. And I think that's just amazing. But it's opening up ourselves to the future and praying and saying, Lord, praying is usually my answer to almost everything, because how else are we going to know what to do? We need that discernment. So I would just encourage any ladies that are listening that are kind of just in that melancholy place, know that there's more. God has you on this planet for more than one reason, more than one purpose. There's a lot more. There's a lot that needs to be done. And if you don't do it, God will ask somebody else. He will. He'll go to the next person if you say no. And that's not uncommon. And I don't want any of your listeners to fall into that.
Yes, yes. Well, what do you wish every mom could know about their identity before the nest is empty, so that the transition feels less like an ending and more like a launch?
Well, I think a lot of them maybe already know. They've already got some, maybe they're working or they're doing ministry or they're in that next thing. But I don't know. I think, again, like always, it's just praying and saying, Lord, there has to be more. And if you're still waiting for your kids to go, just start thinking about it, planning it, asking the Lord, praying about it, because now's the time when you can begin to move towards that. You do want to know what it is, if possible. I didn't know. They're going to be a lot like me that just go, okay, God, I have no clue. And he says, okay, you're doing this. You're turning in this direction, which I wouldn't have picked for myself. But now that I am in it, I can't imagine doing anything else.
Yes. Well, when our hearts are aching from the goodbye and we learn to practically lean into God's presence, I want to know, in that transition for you, how did your relationship with God grow or change or transition a little bit as you entered into a different season of life?
Well, I think it grew because I knew I had to trust him. I had gone through a season of infertility for several years where I was really mad at God. I just couldn't understand why he wasn't giving me what I wanted, and it made no sense. I thought he didn't like me, he didn't hear me, all those things, but he proved himself through that. Even though I wasn't able to have another child and adoption kept falling through every time we tried, he still showed me that he is enough, because he wasn't enough. Back then, all I could see was what I didn't have rather than what I did have. And I hope your mamas are listening and realize they are so gifted at so many things. The Lord will guide you. There's so much more in each one of us. He didn't just give us one thing and say, okay, you're done. May as well just pack it up. He's saying, okay, now you're done. Let's move on. What is that next thing? That's my biggest point in the book. Also, another thing, maybe you were going to ask this question, but before the kids are gone, particularly start working on your marriage. Start pressing into that. He was there before the kids arrived. He's going to be there after. And there's a phenomenon called gray divorce, which is very common now. It's becoming more and more common where the kids go and they're in their 40s or 50s and they're looking at each other going, I don't know you anymore. And I don't even know if I like you anymore. Divorce is becoming all too common among empty nesters. You got to start now. Press into that. Have a date night. I even have a list of date night ideas in the book. Some cost money, some are free. Just ways that you can begin to cultivate and maintain that relationship, because it's not hard for our kids to get between us and our husband, especially if there may be some underlying issues. The kids become the buffer. And it's important to be looking at your marriage now before it's too late. You don't want to be one of those statistics of a gray divorce.
True. I know that was something that was always very important to us, and that's something that we have passed along to our own kids as they start their parenting journeys. Here on Habits of Hope, one of the things we love to do with our guests is hear about a specific scripture that has been meaningful to you and a particular practice or habit that has helped you hang on to hope. In this case, as you transition through the empty nest.
There's Psalm 16 I love. I think it's 5-8. It says, "O Lord, you are the portion of my inheritance and my cup. You maintain my lot. The lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Yes, I have a good inheritance." And that's been a life scripture for me, because it just reminds me that God has set up those boundaries of my life. He knows what they are, which protects me, but also gives me a little bit of room to know that, and sometimes he can expand those boundaries. And it just has always kind of kept me in a calm place to say, Lord, I don't have to worry. Another one is be anxious for nothing, but in all things through prayer and petition with thanksgiving, make your request known to God. That I have often had to say that to myself, just Kate, be anxious for nothing, which is hard. It's very hard to do when you're anxious for everything. That's one, write it down, put it on your mirror, and just remind yourself, especially if you're in that place of, gosh, I don't know what to do. The kids are gone. Oh, what is it that I'm supposed to do? The Lord knows. Be anxious for nothing. It's such a journey of trust. After when you're in your empty nest, or after you're past it a little bit, walking with the Lord's a journey of trust. I mean, I tell people all the time, it's not easy to be a Christian. It's not easy to fully press in and let him lead you. At least I've found that to be true. I have to really make myself and take that time to read the Bible, take that time to worship, to just sit quietly with the Lord. It's so important that we do that, because that's how we hear him.
Yes. You're talking about the importance of trusting God. That's a key theme in this podcast. It's a key theme in the life of every believer. You talk about rediscovering gifts and passions that were put on hold. I think many parents can relate to having to put some things aside to be all there in your parenting years. And it really can be an exciting time to rediscover those things or get to re-experience them, or possibly new things. What's a first step that someone can take this week to begin exploring what could be next?
Think about what moves you, what excites you. Maybe you want to go back to college. Maybe you've always wanted to have your own business. There's a million things that we want, that we desire, that maybe we've known for years that's something I want to pursue. Or you're like me, who didn't have any clue, and God said, here's what you're doing. And I said, okay. But if you think start taking some time now. I tell moms, even if you've got kids at home, work in the margins, those slivers of time that you have. If you want to get your college degree, you can take one semester at a time, one class. And if we wait till we're out and we have the time, we're not going to be as far ahead as if we had started taking one class a year. Well, you're further ahead in getting your degree. Those little things that you can begin to do. Just start thinking that time when you're waiting, the child has baseball practice or ballet practice. During that time, use that to research, to try to figure out what it is. And the Lord will show you. He will always show you if you're going in the right direction, because he will close a door. And I pray that. I'm always, Lord, if this is not what you want me to do, just close that door, end that. But if it is you, then I need you to open that door, because I don't know how to do it myself. And I think he's always faithful to do that. If we're depending on him, he's always going to be listening and going, okay, she's trusting me. She's not just trusting herself. So I think that's the thing, is to continually ask the Lord, am I going in the right direction? If not, stop me and show me what the right direction is. Because I really, like I said, I never planned for the empty nest. I didn't have anything that, I'm going to do this because now I've got all this time. It was just kind of like, oh, now I've got all this time. What am I going to do? And I don't want anybody to fall into that that's listening. I want them to start praying about it, start thinking about it now, and start taking that time to begin to really research what's that next thing.
Yes, yes. Well, Kate, before we wrap up, is there anything that we didn't talk about that's on your heart that you'd like to talk about before we sign off?
I would say, don't let fear stop you. It's very easy for us to doubt ourselves. I did. I thought, there's no way, I'm not equipped to do this. I can't write a book. But God said I could. And it's such a matter of trusting, and not, fear can stop so many of us, or not wanting to come out of our comfort zone. You know that God's calling you to something. You're like, I don't know. Another thing, one thing I didn't mention is find someone to mentor, because older women, the younger women desperately need us. We're not doing it. Many of us are not. I talk about this in the book too, that the Titus 2 woman, she's missing in the church. We're not out there mentoring and helping that next generation, those moms and wives, to figure out, how do I live a godly life in a very ungodly world? How do I, if my kids are still with me, how do I continue to raise them in a way that honors the Lord? But find somebody to mentor, or find somebody to mentor you. And if you know a younger mom, well, you've already walked through what she's dealing with. You've walked through the toddler stage, or the hormones racing through a young teenager. You've dealt with it. So do what you can to help her. But I think mentoring it's a wonderful thing to do that will help you, again, get out of yourself, like volunteering. So I would highly recommend just jumping in. Get in there with a younger woman, and it doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be teaching a Bible study every week. The gals that I work with, we meet for coffee, or have lunch together, and I just ask them, what's going on. I try to be very transparent with all the mistakes that I've made, which are many, and just helping these girls move forward.
I love that you brought forward the concept of mentoring, and how it is a gift of our time when we mentor someone else. But I really firmly believe we are so richly blessed in the process, the sweetness of relationships. I love that you brought that out. For our listeners who would like to connect with you or learn more about your book, can you tell us where to find you?
Sure. My website, just katebattistelli.com. On all the socials, I'm Kate Battistelli, so it's easy to find me. They can get the book at Amazon or pretty much wherever books are sold. And I don't know if we mentioned that there's the after party of the empty nest, and there's also a devotional companion that goes with it that's got journaling pages, and it goes a bit deeper even than the book. So those are both available wherever books are sold, as they say.
Well, we love that. And Kate, thank you so much for joining us today. This has just been a really fun and interesting conversation, and I know that it has blessed our listeners. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was great.
I hope today's conversation with Kate reminded you that the empty nest, or any major life transition, isn't the end of your purpose. It's an invitation to celebrate what God has done, lean into His presence, and ask, "What's next, Lord?" Whether you're rediscovering passions that were put on hold, stepping into a brand new calling, or simply learning to rest in His timing, remember, you are still deeply needed in the kingdom. God's not finished with you yet. Find her book, The After Party of the Empty Nest, along with the companion devotional, wherever books are sold. Until next time, friend, Keep trusting that God's plans for your future are good, purposeful, and full of hope.